A beautiful Monday morning, and this is the breakdown with me, Leo Stanley Boite. And today we are going to talk about the State of the Nation's address, which happened over the weekend in the Parliament of Ghana, read by His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama. He touched on a lot of things concerning the running of the country, the progresses that they have made, and the steps that they have put in place to make sure that the country grows in the right direction. So without wasting much time, we are going to look at point by point some of the most important things that he talked about and elaborated a little bit. We don't have too much time, so we cannot go in deeper, but we are going to hit on the salient points for your understanding. So he did that introduction by acknowledging the difficulty of the past years, framing his administration's first year. He's calling it a rescue mission because, according to him, they inherited a very bad economy, a very, very bad quote-unquote governance when he came in. There was a lot of troubles, debt going here, inflation, going through the roof and all of that. So he acknowledged that part. He says, this is a rebirth from the ashes of a downturn inheritance. Ghana's economy is breathing again, is stronger, is steadier, and full of promise. The focus of this was to emphasize that the 2025 was about stabilizing the ship so that 2026 could be about accelerating the journey. So according to the president, 2025 was used to make sure that everything, slows down and put things in place to make sure that it's steady. And then from 2026, we are going to look at accelerating, which means from now on, Ghana's economy is going to run faster than we witnessed in 2025, mainly because of the things that they have put in place. So he went straight into the macroeconomic performance of the of Ghana, and we are going to look at some of the numbers that he said. He said he went into the hard data to show that fiscal discipline is working. He says primary surplus reached 2.6% of GDP, beating the 1.5% target. So the target was to make sure that they spend within their means and at beating with a target of 1.5%, but they did better to add like 1.1% more to make it 2.6% of GDP. What does this mean? In simple terms, it means that primary surplus means the government collected more taxes and revenue than is spent on daily operation, that is salaries, road services, before paying interest on those debts. So which means, they were very prudent or very careful with the way that government spends money. This also, helped the public debt fall by 82.1 billion, bringing the debt to GDP ratio from 61.8% to 45.3%, which means if we take all our money, 100% of it, before 61% of it was going to pay for debts, but now it has reduced to 45.3%. Let's talk about infrastructure. He talked about infrastructure and energy as well, and he mentioned the big push. Also, the big push, President Mahama confirmed that 50 road projects covering over 1,140 kilometers were initiated in the last year at a cost of roughly about 50 billion cedis. And in the energy sector, he announced the reopening of the domestic refinery to process crude oil, aiming to reduce reliance on important petroleum products. And here he actually mentioned the fact that Ghana is back because TOR was, operating again. He announced the housing projects updates were also provided. Example with the Saglemi housing projects and what they have done. So with the Saglemi housing projects, the president confirmed that the government has moved away from trying to fund the completion entirely on its own. He announced that a selected private developer, following a process led by Deloitte Ghana, is now on board to complete the remaining work at some Saglemi affordable housing project. And the goal for this is to finish the existing units and then also expand the project to its original 5,000 unit target. On the 24-hour economy, like we broke down the last time, there's now a legal framework that is going to guide the 24-hour economy policies. He spent a significant time on this. He confirmed that the legal teeth is now in place. That's what he called it. So for legislative milestone, he referenced his signing of the 24-Hour Economy Authority Act, which happened last, February 19, 2026. And he says this marks a shift from a strategy to implementation. The 24-hour clock has officially started ticking for Ghana's industrial future. On agriculture, he talked about the poultry farming or poultry production, mainly about the Nkokon Kitinkiti, which during the campaign time became a slogan that was everywhere. People ridiculed it. People also thought that it was a good idea. So through the Nkokon Kitinkiti program, the government reportedly eliminated a $300 million poultry import bill. Yes, if you don't know, Ghana imports a lot of chicken from outside, which puts a little bit of strain on our city. So, through the Nkokon Kitinkiti project and, getting more people to get into the production of chicken, this bill is going to reduce, is going to strengthen the city, and it's going to help our local economy as well. He also talked about youth in farming. The AgriNext program has started granting land access to approximately 30,000 young people to go into farming, which I really, really support, because, farming is a venture that we need to start encouraging a lot of young people to go into. It's not always about, white-collar jobs, and we need to make sure that we are sustainable. Nowadays, the world, politics around the world is a bit volatile, considering what is happening in places like Iran, considering what has already happened in places like Ukraine and Russia. All these things affects, economy in various diverse ways. So if we are able to sustain ourselves by encouraging more people to go into agriculture, we are going to be able to get enough food, and we are not going to rely on these places where there's always trouble. He also talked about job creation, and he mentioned the Jumara program, which is now supporting about 2,000 small businesses, and a hire purchase scheme for electric motorbikes. Which was introduced for Okada riders. So for the young men and women who wants to go into the transport business by carting goods on Pragya and Aboboya and Okada, there is a hire purchase scheme for electric bikes. That's smart right there, because electric bikes is going to help reduce the carbon footprint on our environment, and also get employment for a lot of young people. On health and education, he specifically spoke about the no bed syndrome. The president issued a directive that no hospital should turn away emergency cases, stating that you do not need a comfortable bed to save a patient. If somebody comes to the hospital and there is no bed, and there is a way that you can administer certain medications or certain treatment to make sure the person is stabilized, why don't you do it? Why do you have to wait for a bed before you can treat the person? What if the person dies by the time you get the person a bed? So the person may not have died because of the treatment, but just because they didn't get a bed. I agree fully with this. I've heard a lot of health workers saying this will be very difficult for them, but whatever it is, the reason why we are there is to save lives. And in any difficult situation, I think the number one priority is the person's life that needs to be saved. Bed and all these things, yes, we have difficulties, but I do agree with the president that nobody should be turned away because of beds. The person needs to be treated once they get to the hospital. Thumbs up for the president on that. And staffing, he said over 13,500 nurses and midwives were absorbed into the public payroll alongside hundreds of doctors and pharmacies. So which 13,500 nurses are now employed. So for those who I was saying they have not been called. The president says 13,500 nurses and midwives have been absorbed into the public payroll. On corruption in governance, he emphasized that while he is in a hurry to see those who embezzle state funds prosecuted, due process and thorough investigation remain a priority. He even mentioned that the amount for agitated, being impatient to see people who have duped the nation, quote unquote, be prosecuted. And also, so he has that same feeling. But then every single step has to be properly looked at. Go through all the legal frameworks to make sure the people who are accused also have the chance to defend themselves or get the full benefits of the law. So that is that over there. On the environment, the president acknowledged that illegal mining, which is galamsey, remains a significant headache for the administration and pledged renewed enforcement. Yes, they are going to do. I don't know what they are going to do different, because it looks like from the books everything that is humanly possible to make sure that we stop this has been done, but it's not being done. So I'm eager to know the next step, or the difference, or the different strategy that the president is going, or the government is going to adopt to make sure that this thing does not going on. He also opened, talked about employment in general of the Ghanaian youth, mentioning about 1 million Ghanaians who has found employment between the first and third quarters of 2025. He says, while the opposition may express concern, the data from our own statistical service show that the recovery is already putting people back to work. Over 1 million of our brothers and sisters have re-entered the workforce in the last year alone. And when Eugene comes back, we are going to fact check this and then break it down a little bit more further for people to understand. And he also talked about the Jumeirah and then of course entrepreneurship. He says for those who prefer to be on their own bosses, he highlighted that the Jumeirah program, which translates to business owner, says was tackling the youth and aims to mentor and support 10,000 young entrepreneurs between age 18 to 35 annually. So 10,000 young entrepreneurs who wants to venture into various forms of business. The government is going to make sure that they aid you if you are between the ages of 18 and 35 every year, to make sure that you can stand on your feet, to create an enabling environment for you to be able to stand on your feet and then create employment for others as well. Ghana's economy we've always said that it is in the hands of the private sector. If we can strengthen the private sector and grow it at a young age like this, it's going to benefit all of us. He says this includes startup capital, technical equipment, and business development services provided through the National Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program, which is the NEIP. So basically, these are some of the very important points that were raised or that was talked about at the SONA over the weekend. What do you think? Do you think that we are on the right path? These numbers, being reflected in our pockets, which is the most important thing? And do you think the president has what it takes to deliver on all the promises? Well, I'll leave that question to you. This has been The Breakdown with Stanley. We are going to see you on Wednesday. Thank you very much.